Welcome to today's episode. I am thrilled to introduce Gunnar Hood, the president of WSI Summit. With a laser focus on B2B and professional services, Gunnar's expertise lies in empowering businesses to enhance their online presence and stimulate growth through innovative digital marketing strategies. A seasoned educator since 2013, he's enlightened thousands with his knowledge on digital marketing, LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, and now delves into the transformative power of artificial intelligence for business leaders. In 2012, Gunnar left behind a 25-year tenure in financial services to forge his own path in the digital marketing realm with WSI. His relentless pursuit of excellence hasn't gone unnoticed, and over the past 2 years, Gunnar's office has emerged as a top performer within the WSI network. He's also been adorned with prestigious web design awards from WMA and earned the title of top social selling influencer by none other than the LinkedIn whisperer, Bryn Tillman. Gunnar's joining us today as we discuss how to make AI your unfair business advantage, and I am thrilled to dive into his forward-thinking approach to leveraging these new technologies. I for sure know I need it. So Gunnar, welcome to Prospecting on Purpose.
Thanks so much for having me, Sarah. I'm delighted to be here.
I have a bunch of questions for you. So we're just gonna I don't want to say talk to me like I'm a baby, but a little bit. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, my AI knowledge is probably around a 2, if that helps you.
And don't feel bad about that. I was teaching a class recently and we went around the room and asked people to say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you on AI knowledge? And the vast majority said 0 to 2. I even had somebody say double negative 0, if you can make that. And so, for some people, it's a daily conversation, but for others, it's still this unknown element. And my goal is, just have conversations with people and get them a little bit more comfortable with it than where they might be right now. And if they can experiment with it and find something that's helpful to them, that then starts the whole, flywheel process that they go, oh, if it can do that, I wonder if it can do this too. And so, I think, we can talk a little bit more about those examples, but I know you want to first start out with what it really is.
Yeah, can we just do a basic entry level definition of what is AI? And then I'm really excited to get into some specific examples because I think that will help.
Sure. So I think one way to look at AI is things that we may have been using in our lives already that use it from a corporate level. And those might be things like, if I say it, forgive me if something happens, but if you use the Alexa app on Amazon or Siri on your iPhone, those have AI as kind of their backbone. And then you think about it at the corporate level. If your bank has ever called you saying, hey, did you use your credit card for this or that? When you didn't. So there's fraud protection happening in the background. And even if you're applying for a credit card, the whole scoring process that goes on behind the scenes is involved with that. On Amazon, if you're shopping for something, the review and recommendations that come up, people who saw this also like this, there's an element of artificial intelligence or supercomputing going on behind the scenes. So those are things we've learned from or used on a regular basis, maybe without even realizing it. And so now we're transitioning into a period where AI that used to require supercomputing power and language or machine language models and things to be able to run, that really limited it to large corporations or governments. It's now been disintermediated to the sense that you and I as individuals have access to the power of these tools. And it opens up new opportunities for us to do things that we want it to do, not necessarily what others want it to do with us.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's like Amazon suggesting a purchase is Amazon trying to get us to buy something with their supercomputer AI, but now we have access to it. I feel like it only really got on my radar when ChatGPT came out.
And why did that happen?
Because we could just get it for free on the internet
Okay.
with a web browser, right?
Yeah. There was a study done in June that said only 14% of adults in America had even heard of ChatGPT. And yet, by that time, there had been several hundred million users of the product, making it the fastest adopted technology ever in history. And still, there's a large percentage of American adults who didn't even know what it was.
Oh, that's interesting. And it kind of gave me goosebumps a little bit just to think about like how fast that technology was adopted and people still didn't know about it.
Yeah. So, one of the analogies we draw to help people understand what it's capable of is the local library. If you and I had a question for something, flashback even just a couple of years ago, whether it's Google or the library, you had a question, you would go on the internet and you'd look up for an answer. And if it's Google, you get several results that are presented to you that you then have to it's like opening up the books at the library, trying to figure out which one has the best answer for my particular needs. Well, with AI, the difference is that, instead of asking the librarian for the information and her pointing or him pointing you to the books or the section you need to reference, that librarian has now read the entire library and can answer the question for you. And with the way we've already advanced with ChatGPT, that librarian has now read every book and article, in many cases that's out there, and can answer the question directly for you, saving you time and effort from having to go figure out what those resources are.
That's an excellent example. It kind of reminds me a little bit about the difference between like coaching versus consulting. Is coaching is a lot of like pulling it out of you and making sure that you understand, almost from within how to do it, versus consulting is just here's how to do it. Here's the answer. And both are valuable, but if you want the shortcut, that's why you hire a consultant.
And then, a lot of people hesitated to do things with computers because they always felt I didn't know programming language. You
Mhm.
may have been exposed to it in high school or college or something, but unless that was your discipline, it probably went in one ear and out the other. Well, the beauty with AI is that it just uses English as its programming language. You don't have to know a different language. You just have to be descriptive in terms of what you want. And the beauty is that it's called Chat GPT and not Ask GPT for a reason, because your answers get better and better as you actually have a conversation with the tool.
Chat GPT. Okay. Somebody called him Chatty today, and I thought that was cute. Like, Chatty says this. I was like, oh, that's cute. Okay. I'm going to go start calling mine Chatty.
Or, if you're an Iron Man fan or something, you call it Jarvis or something.
Ask
Well,
Jeeves.
yeah,
Our
people
robot
nickname it
is.
a lot of different things.
What's the craziest nickname you've heard?
It doesn't even come to mind right now. Because not too many people share their pet name for it with you.
You guys know mine. It's Chatty.
Yeah.
Now, but so I think what you talked a little bit about, like the where to start. And I think that to me is when I play around with ChatGPT, I don't really like the responses that I get. And I know it's probably because I haven't prompted it in the right way. But I feel like that's where I get a little stuck or frustrated is that I go to use ChatGPT, it spits out something it doesn't sound like me or that I wouldn't use or it doesn't feel authentic to me, so I don't want to put it out there as me. Can we get into some examples on like best practices on how to use ChatGPT or give some examples on how we can start to use it in our roles at our jobs?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think that's what's going to help solidify it for a lot of people. If they hear one of these examples and say, it can do that and it's that easy, they're willing to try it. And the encouragement I give people is you cannot break it. So don't be afraid to try it. Just put in a prompt and see what it means. And so, I mean, we should start with what a prompt is, because some
Okay.
people may go, is it a question? Is it a statement? What is it? And it really is a description. So do you want to describe maybe one of the ones you were testing earlier and we can kind of
Um,
debug it?
Sure. So I wanted to prepare some interview questions for this interview, actually. And because it was an AI conversation, I thought it'd be appropriate to try. And I'm trying to think if I have it handy. So I think I asked it and I put your name in, Gunner, and then I got all paranoid that your name wasn't there. Like, do people worry about that too? Like sharing information into it? Is there any, I know I'm taking us off a tangent, but is there any harm in that?
No, that's a good safety point to bring up because it isn't 100% secure. And so some people may work for corporations that prohibit employees from using it on their computers. And the reason for that is they don't want any of their protected information to end up on the web. And in some respects, that's what it is. Now, if a corporation hires somebody like Microsoft or Amazon for Azure or AWS as their backbone, they can create a firewall version so that the company data is protected, but they still have the ability to reach out and access ChatGPT for its wealth of information without compromising their own data.
So be careful about uploading intellectual property into the tool.
Absolutely.
Trust judgment. Okay. So my prompt that I wrote about preparing for this interview, I wrote, write a list of 10 podcast interview questions. I'm interviewing a digital marketing specialist, Gunnar Hood from WSI, and we're going to discuss how AI can be your competitive advantage at work. And I liked like out of the 10, I liked maybe 7 of them.
Okay. And did you follow up with that or did you leave
I
it at?
did because I've been playing around with it. So I said, please remove questions 2 and 3 and 9 and expand on questions 5 and 7.
Okay.
Because question 5 was practical examples. That was the response it gave me. So the question from ChatGPT was, could you provide some practical examples or case studies where the integration of AI had a significant positive impact on companies' digital marketing efforts? So that's not the question I asked you, obviously, because it's not about digital marketing. But I guess
Right.
because I included that, you were the expert in it. That's why it spit that out.
Yeah. So the only thing that maybe you could have shaped differently in your prompt would be, while he's an expert in digital marketing,
Oh.
let's ask questions about how it might apply to a business owner, small, medium business owner and their operations or their business. So just adding that little bit of context will reshape the questions a little bit.
Awesome. Okay, so is there like kind of a recipe or a formula for a successful prompt?
There is, and some of it is telling it to assume a role in the first place. And so most of mine will start out with assume you are a data analyst or a digital marketer or an SEO expert, or you're a CPA or even a lawyer. And so now you're giving it context to say, this is your role, this is your area of expertise. Then you want to define what it is you want them to do. And you might say, you have a client that is in XYZ industry and they are having a problem with this and have come to you for advice around XYZ. Give it more details. The more information you can feed it in terms of details, the better it gets. And so the analogy we use here comes from my sales coach. He says, generic questions get you generic answers. Specific questions get you specific answers. So the way to look at that is you could tell your GPS tool, I'm in Houston, I want to go to New York. And it could take you any which way it wanted. But if you said, I want to go to New York, but I need to make sure I go through Memphis and, Akron or something else, you're giving it much more explicit directions. And you can also say what to avoid.
Right.
I don't want to go through Florida, or I don't want to take I-10 or things like that. And when you give it both the positives and the negatives, it's creating guardrails for it to operate within and give you more explicit responses.
That was a very helpful example because looking back on all of my prompting, I do think it's generic. Like I think I maybe take it 40% of the way there and then I get irritated because the responses are just repetitive or it's not what I was looking for. So I like that. So give Chatty a role, give Chatty a role. So assume you're XYZ, then define what it is, like what the task is, and let's get into some more specific examples, but specificity is king.
Yes. But you also don't have to feel that you have to get 100% on the first try, hence the chat. So just as you did, you liked a couple of responses and you said, give me more like this and less like that. That's good feedback for it because now it can iterate down. And usually if you go through 3 to 5 iterations, you'll get a pretty darn good outcome. But if you expect it to be the very first one, you're probably going to be disappointed a lot of times.
Okay, that's fair. So we have the podcast example, we have the Houston and New York example. Let's get into some more specifics of like how people can use it. Start our juices flowing, Gunnar.
Yeah. So in the workshop I gave the other day, one of the examples I talked about was, let's say you're a business owner and reviews are important to your business. Well, you can download your reviews from Google and put them in a spreadsheet. You can then feed that spreadsheet into the paid version of ChatGPT and ask it to analyze that and give you kind of a sentiment analysis. This could be something an intern does at your company, but the goal is, what can we learn from customer feedback to help guide improvements in our business that makes for more satisfied customers? And so you can have it assign a weighting to, types of reviews, get quotes around it and so forth. And you'll be amazed at what it can churn out. There was a person there who told me that they started doing this recently. They run a division of the Better Business Bureau. And so they review customer sentiment quite a lot. And they said what used to take them a full day to process data around an industry, they can now do in 2 hours with the help of ChatGPT.
Wow. Well, I'm kind of, as you gave that example, I always give out feedback surveys after my workshops, in person or virtual. And I have been seeing some themes, but I haven't done any type of concrete like analysis on what's the biggest impact. Cause I usually ask people, what is your biggest takeaway? And it's usually
Yeah.
one of the, 4 things. So I'm like, each time I redo it or I give it again, I'll emphasize that section more. But I never thought to use ChatGPT to like summarize it.
One of the things I do is teach LinkedIn. And before I start with a client, I send them a multi-question survey and to assess what are the existing skill sets of these people. I then take those results in spreadsheet format and I give the instruction sets to ChatGPT to say, you are a LinkedIn trainer, basically taking on my role. You've collected this information. You're trying to identify where to customize the training to fit the needs of the organization, identify the skill gaps and knowledge levels, and develop a plan of action that you can discuss with the client. And so again, the specific details are in the survey questions and answers, so I can just attach those to the prompt and say, here's the information. And it takes a minute or two to digest that, and sometimes it comes back and says, I'm not sure what's in this column, tell me what it is, or I need to go back and review it again. And it'll come back, and you can even say, show me graphs. So if you're familiar with the social selling index on LinkedIn, you can have it graph a histogram of performance or scores by individuals on the team to say, what's the distribution here in each one of these categories? Because that can say, this one is on the lower end of the scale, which says there's huge opportunity for us to focus on that and move that ahead for you. And so it makes it what used to take me hours to compile and put into graphs and things like that on my own, it can now do in 20 minutes for me with a lot of back and forth.
Okay, so that's interesting because I want to pull that thread a little bit. I read something, I think it was a Forbes article about, white collar workers who do not embrace AI are going to get left behind. And that intimidates me. That's why we're having this conversation, because I want to learn more about it. But I think that is such a great example of, okay, if you don't embrace it, it will take all day. If you do embrace it, it takes 20 minutes, and then you have more time to do whatever your roles and responsibilities are. Is that kind of I'm assuming that's what that means from that Forbes article.
Yeah, so there have been a lot of articles published from, the New York Times to Forbes and others. And some people will walk away thinking, oh, this is going to eliminate jobs. That's not really what it does because it's very task specific. So what it does is it gets really good at tasks. And the fact is that if you can automate a percentage of your tasks, you don't need as many people to do all of those tasks. But the ones that you do need are the ones who understand how to use AI.
Right.
So if somebody is resistant to learning AI in an organization, they will be at greater risk of losing their position because of that to somebody that is willing to do it. And there's a quote that I share with people a lot. I'm probably paraphrasing it, but the quote is basically success will come to those who learn new technology the fastest rather than old technology the best.
Mm.
So this may date me, but some of the earliest word processors that existed out there were things like WordPerfect. Was before Microsoft Word. Well, there's not a need for a lot of WordPerfect experts out there right now, and there's less of a need for Microsoft Word experts because there's other tools you can use. So if you are willing to invest some time and learn these new technologies, not only will you get benefit yourself from it, but it's going to insulate you from against the competition that is slower to adopt those technologies.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit more in terms of differentiating ourselves because I really liked the example of summarizing customer reviews. Can you give us a couple of other examples on how we can start to like pull it into our day-to-day activities?
Yeah. So, let's say you're sitting in a meeting with one of your clients and they happen to make a reference to an article that they read or a book that they thought was really good, and you're not familiar with it. Well, you can ask ChatGPT to go out there and summarize the book on a chapter by chapter basis or summarize the article for you so you can get a sense of what's in there. You can even take that a step further, and I do this with YouTube, is you can watch a lot of YouTube hours of video, but and get disappointed at the end of it going, oh, that's not what I wanted. But you can use an extension, a Chrome extension with YouTube, and ask ChatGPT to give you a 15 bullet point summary of what's in that video, and it completes it in a minute or two.
Wow.
And then you can say, that looks like that's the right video, or that's not the right video. Let me keep looking for another one. So it can be a huge time saver, in your time and make you happier with the content that you do want to consume versus disappointed by it.
Awesome. Okay, that was a great example too. I'm thinking about some of the areas where I got stuck and still do. Like writing emails, for example. Sometimes emails can take so long, or if you have a delicate email to send, like can Chatty help us with some delicate, when
Yeah,
stakes are high, I call them crucial conversations, but
I've read those books.
yeah, like I haven't tried it yet, but I'm imagining it could do some of that too.
So here's what's cool about it too is if you've read those books, Crucial Conversations, so has ChatGPT. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
can actually instruct it to apply the methodology used in Crucial Conversations to help you frame that email.
Okay, that's cool. So what would a prompt like that look like? What would it?
So, I assume that you are an expert in the topic of crucial conversations, helping a client draft a sensitive email on XYZ topic. And you could take the first draft, say, here's the first draft of the email.
Mhm.
Please apply the crucial conversations methodology and improve on this. So that's step one.
Okay.
And then you look at it when it comes back. And, the risk with anything that it creates that you send to somebody else is that it can sound like AI.
Yeah.
There's some pretty classic indicators in there. Like one of our clients sent us a blog article to read. They didn't mention it was written on AI, but the final paragraph starts out by saying, "In conclusion," which is a classic telltale sign of AI. We're like, did you use AI? Yeah, I did. Okay. So we describe a concept called the human in the loop, which
Okay.
means you don't just want to trust it implicitly that it's going to get it right, but you want to add your voice and your tonality. Bryn Tillman, who we mentioned earlier, her and Bob Woods, her partner, often talk about read it out loud.
Oh, that's good.
So that does it sound like you or not? If it doesn't, then tweak it to make it sound like you. You may like what it says, but you still want to tweak it to be your voice.
That's a great easy tip too. And Bob's going to be on the podcast. I think his episode's going to air before yours, so people may have already heard from Bob. But we didn't spend a lot of time on AI because we knew we were talking to you. And I like the idea of reading out loud. For my season 2 premiere, I had asked ChatGPT to write an intro paragraph just to see. I was playing around, and it was, prospecting on purpose, where we ignite the flames of your personal and professional growth. I was like, I don't think I would ever say that. And I was trying to like find a way to make it a joke. I'm like, we're over here igniting your professional growth. But yeah, so the human in the loop makes a lot of sense to me.
And that's another area where humans will continue to play an important role, regardless of the adoption of AI in the future, is because if you have a level of expertise, whether it's creative genius in a particular, discipline or something else that it might be difficult for AI to replicate, you're going to pick up on what we call the hallucinations that exist. Now, they've gone down as it gets smarter and more people give it feedback, but hallucinations are where it can make stuff up.
Right. I've heard
And there are prompts you can use to actually make it fact check itself these days. So you want to know your content. And an example that became very well known a while back was a lawyer in New York who was preparing for a trial. And he used ChatGPT to pull up a bunch of what he felt was relevant cases that he could use as examples in the courtroom of why, his client should get the outcome he wanted. Turns out every single one of them was made up. They were not real. They were not factual. The judge understood that, tossed the guy out of court, pretty hard, saying, don't ever do that again. And, the downfall was that he just didn't fact check it himself.
Okay.
He wasn't a human in the loop. He just took it at face value.
But so I understand the concept of like the tool is always learning and self-improving. I think I get that pretty clear. But I guess why would that have happened? Where would it get the made up stuff? It just made up cases?
Yeah, so it wants to give you answers.
Oh. Cute. That was cute. It's like your dog wanting to please you.
Yeah, your dog wanting to please you. Or, I mean, before there was ever GPS and things like that, there were always these, comedians talking about, just ask a guy for direction. You'll get an answer, but it may not be the right one.
Okay, that's a great example. The guy at the bar or the gas station saying,
go down there, far piece, and turn left there, and so forth. They want to be helpful, right?
Nobody wants to admit they don't know either. That's probably part of it too.
Yeah. So how much of that really plays into it, I'm not 100% sure, but, in the year that I've been using it, I've seen it get much better, but I also recognize my prompting has gotten a lot better too. Mm-hmm. And you can ask it, say, okay, go back with what you just gave me. Go back and fact check this. Show me your references.
Oh, okay.
And early on, I would get references. I click on the links and they'd be dead end links.
Oh,
and it's like, okay, that didn't work. And it would go, oh, sorry, let me try again. I mean, it will say those words to you and it will try again and get some stuff. So it's a great thing. There's another prompt that I wanted to share with you too, that I think can be very helpful for people starting out. And they go, I don't know what to ask.
Yeah.
So we've got an ebook out that, we'll put in the resources link at the end. But one of the prompts in here is called What Other Details Prompt. And I love this one because you can give it certain information, but if you go, I don't really know what to ask it to give me, you can have it prompt you to ask you questions based on that. And the prompt is simply enter in whatever prompt you want and then say, what other details do I need to provide ChatGPT to ensure maximum success?
Ooh, okay. That's helpful. Because I think in my example of the podcast interview for today, I could have asked what other details, and it maybe would have said, who is your podcast audience or who is I don't know. I'll try it and see what it says.
Yeah. And, you can ask it more than once as well. So that, if it doesn't ask you a lot of the questions or you're not sure, going, that's interesting. What else should I be thinking about or would help you?
What
And it's a great way to, get it to train you how to use it at the same time.
Okay, cool. I'm interested. So we talk about sales and prospecting a lot on this show. So it is a sales lensed podcast. How can sales professionals use ChatGPT to help them in their, professional development, differentiate themselves from the competition? Like, what are some tools we can use ChatGPT for in a sales role?
Absolutely. So we know that some of the highest performing sales professionals out there have a system.
Mm-hmm.
It could be Sandler, it could be Miller Hyman, it could be, Challenger Sale, whatever the system is, that helps them in their process. And they, will coach themselves or coach others to that process, if you will. Well, one of the great things is if you can take that process and put it into text, this is what the process is. This is what a perfect call sounds like. This is what a five sounds like, things like that. You can then upload that information into ChatGPT to say, here is the sales process. Then if you're recording your calls, it's harder to do in person, but if you're doing Zoom calls, you can use Otter or things like that and get the transcription. You can then upload that in the same conversation and say, okay, you are the sales coach evaluating the performance against the metrics in this tool. Review the call and score each component and provide a summary of what gaps there are and what opportunities there are. So here's the cool thing is you may be a solopreneur who embraces a particular sales model, but you don't have a paid coach or somebody to do that for you. Well, if you start doing these things, you've got an AI coach that can help you get better because even if you listen to your own call, you're likely going to miss things going, did I do that? Did I not do that? I don't know. It sounded good enough to me. ChatGPT is going to, be agnostic about that and just score you the way that it's been asked to score you. So it's going to be much more objective than subjective about it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have like 6 questions from that. So I definitely heard almost like when we were talking about the prompting, there definitely seems to be a formula. So it's like context, give it the context. So in your example you just gave, the context would be whatever sales methodology you're using. So context first, and then define what you want. So then the request is listen to review this transcript of the sales call and give me a rating or give me feedback on areas of opportunity. Did I say
Yeah. Just evaluate the performance against the sales model of this call. You can make it that simple
evaluate
and
the
then
performance?
tweak it afterwards.
That's really cool because I think most people, if they have a growth mindset, they want to get better and they're open to feedback, even though it's can be tough. But it's almost like this is not your boss giving you feedback or the customer giving you feedback. It's like a non, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a
Non-threatening.
yeah, it's not a real life thing. So it's an objective tool that we can start using, and it's not coming from a place of ego or like objective viewpoints. It's more straightforward and there's no emotion involved in ChatGPT's response.
And if you take it a step further, oftentimes if you're in a human interaction, a coaching interaction, there's a hesitancy to say certain things, for fear of, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or they don't want to ask because they don't want to make, they don't want to make it sound like they did something bad. But there was a book written from a New York Times author several years ago that was titled Everybody Lies. The title went longer and longer. But basically what he said was, you can distill the truth by looking at Google searches because people don't lie in their searches the way that they lie to surveys. And so if AI is here as a tool, people are likely going to be more honest and candid in what they want or the feedback that they give than if they were dealing with a human.
Yeah, that I've never thought about that. And that makes a lot of sense because people don't want to let you down, even in sales. Like I would have customers or prospects promise me something. Like I used to sell fire features and they'd say, oh yeah, we have a fire in this project. I'm like, cool. So I'd follow up and I don't think they actually needed that or wanted it. They just didn't want to let me down because they liked me. It's like, well, you just wasted everyone's time because you were trying to be nice. but I understand it because we all do it, but I really like the idea of viewing this as like an objective coach, an objective resource to help make us all better in our sales efforts.
Yeah. And the other part about it too is it can review far more calls than a human can.
Yeah.
Because in my early days in financial services, I was a coach and a trainer, and we would download calls from reel to reel tapes, listen to those, and then coach people on them. But the number of calls we could actually listen to compared to the universe was really difficult. With ChatGPT, you can certainly do a much larger number, and then you can get trend analysis around it too, going, is this person improving or not based on the feedback?
I wonder if it breaks down like Sarah talked about herself for 5 minutes, or, I wonder if it would give you that.
Some of the tools like Otter AI that exist out there, one I think is called Sybil, and I forget what another one is. They kind of have some of those things built into them as they evaluate percentage of talk time and other things. So some are more geared towards the sales environment
Okay.
or customer service.
Yeah, and I guess that's another thing. It's like, okay, we know ChatGPT. You mentioned a Chrome extension to summarize YouTube videos, but if people don't know, okay, so I had something I had to do over the holiday break. I have my workshop. It's done. It looks cute. It's my branding, my slides. I'm presenting at an in-person workshop in February, and they needed me to use their PowerPoint template. My presentation is long, it's fun, there's animations. Transferring it from Canva to PowerPoint took me oh my God, I watched 2 Harry Potter movies in the background. So that's like 5 hours of my time. Luckily, it was over Christmas and I wasn't doing much, so it wasn't hard. But I just kept thinking, oh, this is so frustrating. Why can't like AI do this for me? And I'm guessing it could. I just wouldn't know where to start exploring that. Do you have any suggestions on like a task? We'll just use this as our example, but any task where we think it's taking up so much of our time, what's our first steps to try to see if AI could solve it for us or do it for us?
Yeah, so start with the highest level. Ask it if it knows of any resources that are available that could help you do that.
Just
What
ask
would be the
ChatGPT.
steps?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So chat, my presentation is in Canva. I needed to match this PowerPoint deck provided by the client. Are there tools available that can help me do this quickly? And if there isn't a translator, because I've looked and there's still some squishiness even with AI in Canva. But one of the things you could do is take your client presentation deck and load it as a branded presentation in Canva so that now you can apply that branded model to yours. There, if you use Canvas fonts, they likely aren't going to translate to your clients, but it can start to understand going, if you want to change this to this font, do you want to change it at every time it occurs in here and stuff like that? So it can shortchange it a little bit, but just ask AI, are there tools out there? Because there's hundreds of tools being created daily to do this that might be very helpful and save you one Harry Potter episode.
Right. Okay. I mean, luckily it was number 5 and that one's boring, but I think about, okay, I would have thought to just ask ChatGPT, how do I do this? So that's a really great like first step. Like, how do I do this? And what other details do I need to provide you? That's really clever.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead. It sounded like you had another question.
Well, I have another thing that I think could be an interesting thing for us to discuss. I have a proposal that's due to a prospect and they want some custom offerings that I could absolutely do. I just haven't put pen to paper and priced it out before. So I'm imagining like proposals would be something, or what other things can we start looking at ChatGPT to help expedite and collapse time for us?
Yeah, and it's really exciting because it was early November that they announced the most recent release of ChatGPT, which included something called custom GPTs. So the best analogy I can give you for this is, whether you've got an Android or an iPhone, there's a store out there that sells apps, that do specific tasks. You buy that app, or there's a free app that lets you do something specifically, workouts, anything else. Custom GPTs are like that in the sense that you now can build the app. I mean, if you were intimidated about creating your own app for iPhone or something because you had to know certain programming language, That's now English. And ChatGPT gives you the framework with the paid version to create these custom apps, or GPTs as they call them. And so it saves you time and effort because you can preload in the assumptions and the guardrails and other things. So assume you are, the head of your company that does this. You have and so you give it the guardrails, and the client then would become the exception to that, going, okay, now apply all of this knowledge to this situation. We need to create a proposal that includes our basic pricing framework plus unique elements for X, Y, and Z. Put this in our standard format for proposals and include this, but leave this out. In fact, there was a digital marketer who attended my session last week and sent me an 8-minute video yesterday showing exactly how she did this. And she was like, oh my God, this is going to save me so much time going forward, because now it knows her pricing structure, it knows her rules and everything else. And she can just say, okay, here's the client's name. This is what we talked about that we're going to do. Put this in a proposal. And she says, I used to spend just an inordinate amount of time over complicating this process, and it has simplified it to just a couple of minutes.
Okay, well, I'm going to try it tomorrow, and then I'm going to send you a video of my efforts too, because I'm thinking about, so I like I appreciate all of your analogies, Gunnar, because I think that's helping me, make the pathways in my brain. But I really like the idea of your phone has different apps on your phone for different reasons. So if I'm thinking about a custom GPT for my business, for example, I could have one custom GPT or an app. We're using those words interchangeably. One could be for solo podcast episodes. One could be for interview questions. One could be for proposals. One could be because a lot of my content is just adapted for the customer. So it's customized, which is quite time consuming, but you want the examples to be customized to your audience. Maybe that would be another custom GPT. I'm just trying to kind of understand it for my business and how I would use it. Did I summarize that correctly? If I have a proposal, I go to my proposal chat GPT, or excuse me, custom GPT.
Yeah, exactly. Here's another example. A guy I know who also is in the marketing space has a client in the funeral home business.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they do repetitively is write obituaries. And he asked him, how long does it take you to write one of these? And they go, gosh, it could take 5 to 7 hours to do that.
Yeah.
And so what they did is they took a number of the obituaries that they had written to understand the empathy, the tonality, and the type of topics that are usually discussed in it. And they loaded those in and created a custom GPT. And then they said, okay, now it's going to ask you certain questions when you have a new one to write. And it would go through the process. Okay, tell us about the person, family members, survivors left behind, things like that. And it would output a new obituary. And the response from the client was, oh my God, this sounds exactly like we wrote it, but it took 3 minutes or 2 minutes. And that would have taken us 5 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I'm literally thinking about all of the different ways I can apply it. And I think about the things that take up so much of my time that are preventing me from doing the next level in my business are not writing obituaries, but things like that, emails, content producing, LinkedIn posts can take hours to write. I sent out an email the other day and somebody said, this was so well written. I said, it took me 2 hours and we use ChatGPT. But now if I have enough of a arsenal or a bank of data, now it sounds like I can make a custom GPT and it will start to understand my voice and my style now.
Exactly. And so there's a future in selling custom GPTs as well. And the question is, well, if it can do that, why can't it just copy somebody else's? And the magic is in the database. It's your data, it's your phrasing, things like that. And if that's protected and not public, then that's what becomes of value to people, is how you did it, not the fact that what it did, but how you did it.
Yeah, because I think that's where I get a little nervous about uploading things to ChatGPT, because it's my intellectual property and it's my method and that's what I want people to pay me for. But if I'm just giving it away for free on the internet in 9 different spots, am I cutting myself off? And I don't want to have that mindset, or that's a little bit of a scarcity mindset, but it's there. So I like the idea of kind of having the protected custom GPT that's my property.
It could be a great question to ask ChatGPT these days too, is, I want to create it, but I'm concerned about this. What steps can I take to protect my data?
Okay, I like that. Okay, so the moral of the story is just ask ChatGPT if you don't know where to start.
Yeah, I
I've
mean,
been going to like YouTube videos. I'm like, I'm so dumb. I should have just been going straight to the source.
here's a fun example is one of the things they also released recently was the ability for it to interpret images.
Okay.
Well, I took my phone to the fridge. I opened up the fridge doors and I took a picture of the inside of my fridge and the contents. And I said, all right, chat, I want to cook something with chicken tonight. Based on the contents of my fridge, what would you recommend? So it gave me two recipe options. It says, well, I see you've got honey and mustard. You could do like a honey mustard glaze with olive oil and, saute the chicken in that. Or I see you also have a lot of vegetables. You could do a chicken stir fry, as an option.
No
And
way.
if you took those, you could say, okay, give me a recipe for those if you wanted to.
Oh, that is cool. Well, it kind of reminds me of your earlier example about the librarian, because I would do the same thing with Pinterest. I'd go to my Pinterest app and I'd say, okay, I have these ingredients in the fridge, but it would come up with recipes, but you still have to click, read through all the ads, read through all the blog posts about, the history of chicken from all of these different blog readers just to get to the recipe. I am going to try that this afternoon and dig
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting what it'll come up with. And, if you don't like it, say try again. Just hit the
Okay.
regenerate button.
Okay. And then I want to ask you too, because I mean, knowing you, I have definitely been trying to use a lot of nice manners when I talk to ChatGPT. How do you feel about please and thank yous?
So I may be stupid on this point, but I've heard different opinions on it. And one is that, it's being trained with everything that we do. So does it really hurt to say please and thank you and hope that maybe that's part of its training? And others have said it doesn't care. You can just be matter of fact with it and command it. And I don't know. I just find myself doing that because it also responds with, "Oh, I'm sorry," and things like that. And it's like, it seems a little bit more human, I guess, if you want to look at it that way.
Well, and I think you had said too, it's like it's always learning.
Yeah,
So we want it to learn nice manners before our
we
AI
can hope.
overlords take over our lives. But until they do, we'll stay in the human in the loop driver's seat.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna ask you two more questions. What would you say? I think you did a really nice job. Like I'm a way more energized and excited about using it than reserved and anxious as I felt like I was at the beginning of the interview. What would you say is kind of like leave last minute advice for people who are just really resistant or nervous about it? Like what will you leave us with in terms of how to get over some of those fears?
Well, one is, listen to podcasts like this, where people are translating it into a tool that anybody can use.
Mhm.
It's not just for corporate use, that anybody can do it. And think of the simplest thing that you want to solve for. There you go. I just don't feel like going to YouTube or digging up all this stuff or going through 15 questions on Google. Try it. Even in the free version of Chat GPT, as long as in the free version, I think the data set is now current to April of 2023. So there's still some lag to it. But if you don't need it to be, most recent minute information, then it's going to have a pretty robust database that you can have faith in. But, then it's just a matter of try it and you'll be surprised. Maybe you're planning a trip.
Mm.
Ask it to be your travel advisor and give you some ideas. How many times have you gone to TripAdvisor and other places and had to sift through so many different things? Now you can say, okay, be my travel advisor. I want to go to this location. I want to do hiking. I want to do this and that. Give me a 3-day itinerary, that fits this budget and see what it comes up with.
Cool. Okay, so I like that. Maybe that's the good takeaway is anytime you go to YouTube or Google, start going to ChatGPT first and see what it comes up with.
And now those tools are starting to adopt it too. Bing now has AI built in. Google is now starting to incorporate AI, and they have another tool called Bard So that's free. You can use it, and it's really good for some things. And it's like choosing a car. The difference in AI models out there is like choosing car versions. They all have different options and feature sets. Some are better in one thing than others. That's the same thing. You don't have to know what all those are to use them. Just test them and say, "Hey, this is the answer I got on ChatGPT. Let me try it on Bard and see what the difference is."
Oh,
And
that's a
because
good idea.
yeah, they reference different things. It's still kind of the universe of the internet, but Google obviously has a strength in what it did. ChatGPT just got sued alongside Microsoft by the New York Times because New York Times is alleging that they used their database of information to train ChatGPT, and that's a copyright infringement. So that may be impacting some of the information we see on there in the near future.
I just saw that. I went to a conference. I know we're wrapping up and now we're just opening more cans of worms, but I went to a conference in May of this 2023, and they were talking about human made versus AI made and what you can actually copyright. And if it's something that AI generated, it's a lot more difficult. As I don't think legally you can copyright it. So that's part of, I think, where it's just going to be a learning curve as we wade through all of these unknown situations because none of us have ever been through it before.
Oh, you just brought up a really great example we hadn't touched on yet, and that is image creation.
Yeah.
You're writing an article, maybe it's for a client or you doing something specific. How much time have you spent sifting through stock image photography, trying to find the image that fits the scenario?
I tried to find a picture of a winking bird the other day and I didn't like any of the graphics out there. I didn't even think about AI. I needed a picture of a bird winking.
So now you can just type that into ChatGPT and say, create an image of a bird winking. You could say, make it a toucan or make it
Yeah.
a parakeet or whatever you want. And, it will give you a version, then you can iterate on that. And so there's a lot of image specific generation AI tools out there. Midjourney is one. DaVinci is another. ChatGPT has it. Apparently, Google just released something that you can now type that into the Google prompt and see, have it generate something. And it's a way that you can combine creativity in images that was extraordinarily difficult to do in the real world, because how often would, this lion interact with this human in a car driving down Fifth Avenue or something like that? But you can make that happen with ChatGPT.
Oh, dang. I literally needed a picture of a winking bird. And I was like, I've spent so much time and I didn't find it. So I gave up on the plan. I'm like, oh,
We'll
I
do it
can't
after
even
this
think
call.
about it. Okay, cool. Well, I'm so excited. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and talking to us like we're kindergarteners. And I'm just going to say that for myself because this is intimidating. But now I feel like I have like 6 different things I want to try as soon as we wrap up. So before we end, first, we will include things in the show notes too. So all of the different softwares that we talked about today, I'd like to include them in the show notes just so that there's a one place for everyone to find them. But how can people find you, Gunnar, and learn more about you and your resources and your knowledge sharing, really?
Yeah, well, again, I appreciate the opportunity, and there's a couple ways. From a social media perspective, my primary channel is LinkedIn, and there's only one of me on there. But rather than have to type in LinkedIn's way to get there, you can just type linkedgunner.com. It'll take you to my profile.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
So that's the easy way. Second thing is, I have a digital marketing agency. It's called WSI Summit. So it's WSI-summit.com. But again, to make it easy, we've put some AI resources together on a page, and you can just go to Gunnar Hood. That's GUNNARHOOD.com/AI. And we will constantly be updating that. So if you visit it today, you can come back a month from now and there are going to be different resources there because we continue to evolve. One of those is an ebook that's about 90 pages long that talks about AI, what it is, how to use it. It includes tools. It includes prompts based on industry or what you want to accomplish. So it can be kind of your starter guide, if you will, on how to do this.
Awesome. Oh, okay, perfect. We'll link that in the show notes. And I really appreciate you keeping that updated, because that seems to be the thing is AI, once you learn it, it's still changing every day or every minute.
And that's the biggest risk for business owners is going, I see the value of this, but I'm hesitant to do it because what if I choose the wrong thing and it's obsolete tomorrow? And so one of the things that we also have that you'll find on this page is an AI readiness survey
Oh, okay.
where you can get a score for, how ready are you for AI? There may be things you already have that you're not aware of that are in there, and it'll help give you some guidance around maybe here's the right next step for you.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Gunnar. I learned so much. I feel really excited, and I'm going to circle back with you after my proposal, after I make my winking bird graphic. You're going to get a report back from me.
I look forward to it.
Oh, thank you so much for joining. I am excited about the new evolution we're going into or stepping into.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Sarah. I hope your audience gets a few good tips out of it.
I'm sure they will. Thank you.